that digs into a very important philosophical view of what is the job of marketing and advertising. A lot of people today, digital natives, they think the job of marketing is you invest money, you buy clicks, you sell stuff. The reality is that's not the case. You invest money, you buy impressions. Impressions build awareness. Awareness drives people to your store, and in this case, the web, and that eventually leads to sales. So really, when you're a marketer, you're buying impressions, you're buying mindshare, you're buying thoughts. And that's really, really important to kind of put out there, because if you're focused just on clicks, and that's your thought process of philosophy of how marketing works, you're going to be focused on buying at the bottom of the funnel.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Jeff Greenfield is co-founder and CEO of Provalytics, a platform that helps marketers with attribution and planning. He's worked with clients like JP Morgan, Carhartt, Nestle, and Fender. He's been published in small little places like The Wall Street Journal, The Times, The Post. He has 3 decades of strategic marketing experience, and he's here today to talk about attribution and advertising. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, Jake.
Let's just jump right in, because people out there are wondering about attribution. It's last clicks, it's first clicks, it's 0 clicks. There's, God made it happen. Can we talk about what attribution meant in the past? And with all the things happening in the space, what it means now and going forward? It's a big question, so take it at your leisure.
It is. I'm actually going to start with God, because you brought up a very important aspect of attribution, which is that attribution is almost like a religion internally for most organizations. So that's important to understand, because we're going through this process now of changing. And a lot of people think that, well, change is just going to be, hey, this is the new way. And it's like, no, you have to go through a whole change management process, kind of like converting to a new religion. It's gonna take a period of time. So just be aware of that. But historically, attribution was all about, especially at the birth of digital, when digital started coming around and getting very popular, and like 2006 to 2008, all of a sudden we had all this big data. Attribution was all about collecting every single click and every single impression, so that you had this essentially path to a purchase or path to conversion, where somebody would go through and they do something you wanted them to do, buy something, fill out a lead form, something like that. And you could line up a date and timestamp path of every single ad they were exposed to and everything they clicked on and every interaction on your site. And then you could go through with machine learning and figure out where you should spend more and where you spent less. And that was pretty straightforward. It was great. But that started at like the birth of digital. Mm-hmm. And then, it was awesome, because new sites would come around. And when we would onboard clients in the day, we would actually send out our, what we would call an impression tag, so that anytime you would see an ad, wherever it was, our impression tag was there. So you could collect the whole path to conversion. Then all of a sudden, Facebook one day said, hey, guess what? We're not going to allow any more vendors with attribution. We're taking down your tags. And so what that meant is that on Facebook, we would only have clicks. We would no longer be able to have impressions. We'd still have that date and timestamp path, but we wouldn't have impressions of how many ads someone was exposed to on Facebook. And so what that meant was we were blind. So before, in the early days, it was 100% deterministic. We saw everything. And then all of a sudden, no more Facebook. But that was okay, because historically we had data for Facebook, so we could kind of, create a probabilistic model. And then all of a sudden, YouTube came along and said, hey, we see this privacy thing that's coming down the path. No more tags on YouTube. So these are 2 big properties where there's no more tags. And then in the last couple of years, we had all the iOS stuff that happened, and cookies haven't worked on iOS in years. So Imagine that date time stamp path, but there's no iOS devices. And then now we've got the whole third-party cookie thing, and the way you were able to connect clicks back to their original impressions, meaning someone saw an ad on the New York Times, let's say, is through third-party cookies. So now what used to be attribution, where you had every impression and every click, now all you have is just the clicks. And that's the world that we're looking towards coming forward in Q3 of this year, when third-party cookies are gone.
And I read somewhere people who clicked on an ad weren't as likely to make a purchase. Have you heard something similar to this? Because I was like, boy, if we're tracking clicks, we got to click. Marketers are celebrating. We're cracking the champagne. Clicks.
There's a lot of accidental clicks that are out there. And also that digs into a very important philosophical view of what is the job of marketing and advertising. A lot of people today, digital natives, they think the job of marketing is you invest money, you buy clicks, you sell stuff. The reality is that's not the case. You invest money, you buy impressions. Impressions build awareness. Awareness drives people to your store, and in this case, the web, and that eventually leads to sales. So really, when you're a marketer, you're buying impressions, you're buying mind share, you're buying thoughts. And that's really, really important to kind of put out there, because if you're focused just on clicks, and that's your thought process of philosophy of how marketing works, you're going to be focused on buying at the bottom of the funnel, because that's right close. And when you do that, what ends up happening? Your funnel's smaller because you're reaching fewer people. That concept of reach in advertising has been around for years. Reach fewer people, your cost is going to go up, and advertising effectiveness is going to go down. And that's kind of the world we're in right now, because right now what's happening is people who are, anyone who's out there, if they're living in the world of GA4 or any type of last click view where it's just click-based attribution, if you were to go through to your final KPI or conversion and see how many things you could directly link back, you're going to find that it's about 20 to 30%. The other 70 to 80% is what we call navigational, meaning your attribution methodology is going to show you that 70 to 80% of your sales either came from direct, meaning they just showed up, or brand search. But if we go back to that philosophical thing that we're not buying clicks, we're buying impressions and we're buying awareness, I want to know what's driving 80% of my business. So I need to know what is driving awareness, what is driving people, what messaging, what creative, what source is driving people to then come search for my brand or to just show up. And that's what's missing from attribution today. And it's going to be all gone once the third-party cookies are completely gone. And that's the issue, is that you're going to be making decisions based on 20 to 30% of your data, which is all click-based, which will lead you to spend all your money in the bottom part of the funnel. And that's not good. It's good for Google. It's good for retail media. It's not good for your brand. And it's not good for your job security either.
Well, but the CFO is saying, like, that's perfect. You know, who's ever in charge of budgets are like, okay, yeah, so mind share. How's the mind share looking? We didn't sell anything. You know what I mean? Right. And you're like, well, hold on now. Let's get to this next question about the biggest barriers to attribution. I mean, I think you mentioned something about the philosophical mindset. What is the remit of marketers? You know, I think maybe that is a very centralized, pivotal piece. But what are some other attribution barriers? I mean, we could name them all, but can you do it?
Yeah. The biggest barrier is this concept, we already talked about it philosophically, is that everything is based around clicks. And the problem is that years ago, people that are now in the C-level got to look at click-based attribution, and they got to look at GA, and they know that things like organic and direct are important. I've heard C-level folks say, just spend more money on brand search. That's what's driving most of our business. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that's great, but you can't spend $1 million more on brand search I have to spend $1 million more in a place that's actually going to drive it. But the biggest barrier, I think, is with any type of change in an organization is that people don't take the time to take the whole team along with them on the journey. If you're a head of growth or a VP of marketing and you're like, hey, I get this, we need a new way of measuring, don't expect that everybody's going to just fall along with you. You got to take them along with the journey, and you have to pan the camera back a bit so that they can see the big picture. And that's probably the other biggest barrier, is that since the 2008, let's say, folks have been hyper focused on this user level journey, this concept that I can market to a specific user and I can target to them and I can measure at that level. And that's all going away because of all the privacy stuff that's happened. But most marketers are still in that mindset. And most of them are looking for ways to circumvent everything. Oh, I'm going to use one of the ID systems that are out there. I'm going to use all of these things. But the reality is that when you step back and you look at what this user level marketing approach has done, and we talked about this earlier, is it's driven all of our dollars to the lower part of the funnel, which is decrease the effectiveness of advertising. That's why you're starting to see a lot of the big brands have cut back on their lower funnel advertising,
Right.
and they're all going to branding. Branding is now, believe it or not, the new growth lane. It used to be that you couldn't connect branding to dollars, but with this new wave of attribution, you can absolutely connect the impact of branding all the way through to revenue, which makes your CFO happy, which ultimately unlocks bigger budgets, which is what, as marketers, we want.
Yeah, I was just looking on somebody today. It was a big company, and they turned off they turned off their paid ads, and nothing happened. Everything went up. Like,
right.
But it's hard. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're trying to run that big experiment, your central point about getting everybody on the same page, like you got new tech stacks, you got new things. A lot of those are happening, and the siloization. Everyone says we got to break down the silos. Well, the silos happen because maybe this person needs this thing, you need this marketing software or whatever, then sales needs something, and then they need some kind of CRM thing. And then already you have a disparity in between things. And then you're collecting platform metrics from all these places. You don't have a taxonomy on how you handle the data. So then that comes in, and now you have like 2 or 3 things competing against each other, when in fact, what you did was give people the tools they need to do the job they need to do. But you didn't talk about it in a holistic frame, did you? Jeff, am I just preaching to the choir? Is that how it happens? How does it get so complicated? It's not because they want complication, right?
Right. It gets complicated because, first off, you have to understand, to the CFO, advertising and marketing expenses are one of the top line items in the P&L, besides
We all know that.
your team. Yeah, we definitely do.
Us marketers feel that in our bones.
I'll give you a great example of this. We have a client who is focused on last click, like everyone is when we come in. That's what they do. And we went in and looked at their entire last year and a half of data that they had available, which they all had like in their data warehouse. So it was easy to get all that data, put it together,
right,
and model it. And one of the problems that the CMO had is that the CMO knew that upper funnel is the way to go. They want to be like these bigger brands. They want to focus their dollars on the upper funnel,
right?
But they can't, because on last click, it showed that things weren't looking good. So in this example, they can allow $1,000 cost per sale. That's what they can allow and still make money. And in last click, the world of paid social is coming in at a $15,000 cost per sale, $15,000. So what does the CFO do? The CFO looks at these results and is trimming the budget. And as a result, sales are flat. They're starting to decline now. So we're brought in to do this analysis, and we come in and we look at the analysis, and we actually see that paid social has a $200 cost per sale, $200, not $1,000, $200. Okay. So
whoa. Wait, how did they get that giant number?
Because they weren't looking at, when they were modeling it, they were only looking at clicks. But we modeled the holistic view. We're looking at impressions. And when you're looking at clicks, people see Facebook ads and Instagram ads. Some click on them, but a lot of them, they see a bunch of them, and then they go and they type in the brand name into Google and they search, or they go directly to the URL. So they bypass that click. But here's where marketers sometimes mess up. Marketers say, oh my God, $200 cost per sale. They run to the CFO and they say, give me more money for this. And CFO's not going to do that. The whole team's going to think you're a crazy person. So then what do? We start to design some experiments, very pinpoint experiments that then the CMO can take back to their bosses, the CFO and the CEO, and say, hey, this is why we need to unlock budget. Then when they do that, and the idea is that, is it $10,000 cost per sale? Is it 200? Well, guess what? Our data says it's closer to 200 than it is to 10,000, but it's someplace in a range, okay? But then it's up to the CMO to do an experiment or two to prove it out beyond a shadow of a doubt. And then what happens? The budget gets opened up. So it's a multi-step process. Do a historical analysis, do 1 or 2 experiments to prove that the model is correct. Then the budget goes up. And then why do you keep modeling? Why do you refresh things every couple of weeks? Because we live in this environment where there's a lot of bidding that's going on. There's a lot of competition. Things are constantly churning and changing. You always need to make sure that even though you've put in your GPS or you're heading to the destination, they update routes along the way. You need to make sure that you're still headed in the right direction. And that's the key.
Absolutely. I mean, really, there's a difference, and I'm just kind of freestyling right now, just thinking about, you have your map, you have your compass, you have the navigator, but then what you need is local intelligence, like someone who understands the land, and that's sort of like a scout or something. And I think we have prevented ourselves from building sensory intelligence about marketing because we've been so focused on the dashboard. And you don't take a minute to say, are these numbers true? Because, I mean, to marketers, if the numbers look great, they're true. If they look bad, we need to massage it a little bit and maybe tell you how they're actually secretly great, which doesn't help things. You know, I think having someone who can come here and help understand the difference in between how we're modeling things, how we're measuring things, what we're actually getting from those things. And then you can change the way you approach it. But now let's just talk about this. You mentioned some ways in which I think attribution already, before cookies, mid cookies, it doesn't matter. Cookies don't matter. You just explained to us some of the benefits of thinking about attribution broader. Do you think cookies going away is going to help people get towards this broad attribution, or are they just going to be working around in sandboxes and cohorts? And, you know, is Google going to keep us in their skating rink?
I think that most people as human beings, we don't like change.
Absolutely.
So unfortunately, I think most folks are going to still keep going the way they're going. That's just what's going to happen. I mean, I've seen so many changes happen and marketing throughout the years that people are just going to keep going in that direction. The people that are going to stand out, the smart marketers, the ones who are going to really elevate their organizations, are going to be the ones that see the opportunity in this cookie thing. And when I say opportunity, what I mean by that is that it's very rare that something happens in the technological advertising space that reaches a point where the C-level is aware of it. There's not a single C-level person today that has not heard about these cookie changes. This has elevated its way all the way out, not just from folks that are on the ground turning the dials in Google Ads, but folks that are not even involved with marketing have heard about this. And it's because it's made its way through like the halls of Wall Street, because they're talking about the impact that it's going to have on other publicly traded companies. So if you're a smart, savvy marketer, what you know is that if you haven't already gotten the question, you're going to be getting a question from your bosses or your boss's boss's boss. And it's going to be, what are you doing about this? And the answer is going to be, I'm making some sort of change. So if you think you're not going to make a change as a result, the change is going to be, you're going to probably be looking for a new job. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Because It's going to be asked. And if it doesn't, if you don't get asked now, by Q4, you're definitely going to be asked, and you just better be looking for a new job at that point. So the smart ones are saying, okay, this is an opportunity to do something really big in the organization and take it through a change, because if the C-level is expecting a ripple effect, then let's do something that involves some real change management and really put our stamp on it. So this is a huge, huge opportunity for folks that really want to make a difference in an organization and make a difference for their career as well.
So you gave us an instance where you came in and helped someone sort of create that holistic modeling, reduce the claims from a $10,000 budget to a $200 budget. I mean, that sounds like a Cinderella story to me. Do you have like another story that you can share, like a Cinderella story where you came in and you aligned it all and got their attribution working right? And then also, do you have an attribution horror story?
Oh, I have tons of attribution horror stories.
There's usually more horror stories.
I'm gonna go right to the horror story because people love horror stories, but this is a reality, because the problem with attribution is that there are winners, and in order to have a winner, you have to have a loser. And what I mean by that is larger enterprise clients typically have a multitude of agencies, and these agencies handle different channels. And so when you think about the pie, and the pie is the budget, and that as the budget grows, everybody wants to get a larger piece of pie. But as someone comes in like me as the scout, or in this instance, the sheriff, I come in and lay down the law, and somebody gets a smaller piece of pie, they get very upset because we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in budget, and that can have a large impact to a company. So we came in, new CMO brought us in, and everyone knows new CMOs, they have a license to do things for a period of time. Came in, did the same type of historical analysis, and the CMO said, boom, we're off to the races, let's go. Didn't build up consensus, didn't do that step there. Remember, new CMO. But in many instances, some of these agencies have been servicing that client for years, and this is not their first rodeo. And one of the losers, the head of the agency, was actually friends with several board of directors for this company. And about a month later, the CMO was gone. And then we were gone, and they were back to their old way of spending. So that's a horror story. A horror story is when you see a better way, you actually see the impact from it, and then you go back to the way things were because you didn't bring people along in the journey. So, and anyone who has ever done any type of change in an organization knows that if you don't bring everyone along, things are actually going to go backwards. And to me, that's a horror story, is when an organization goes backwards.
And I just imagine that there's going to be some of this with marketing automation, a decade or so ago, when that kind of caught a fever pitch. Now there's AI.
Right.
There is going to be a dearth of organizations that create consensus around these tools. Do you think? Or do you think it's going to be like, what's your thoughts about AI? I mean, being aligned.
Well, I think it has a great place for a lot of organizations. Like, one of the best use cases I've seen is when you think now about help desk. And we're not just talking about talking to bots, because that's been going on for a while, but what we're talking about is, tickets come in, and the human has to go in and choose, what is the correct response, and sometimes customize it. But now most organizations have AI that goes in, and they take their whole historical history of all the responses to all questions, and they're now offering a recommendation. So the human just glances and clicks send on it. So time savings, cost savings for organizations, plus getting to the customer so much faster, because that's really what we want more than anything else as a customer. So
yep,
I think every organization is going to be touched by this. It's just a matter of figuring out what is the best use case. You don't want to utilize AI just for the sake of utilizing AI. You want to use it only if it helps your end customer. That's really the key, is that if it's a win for your end customer, then it's a win for you. And that's really the focus there.
Well, what's your thoughts then on machine learning as applied to attribution? Like you mentioned some hindrances that could make the reporting of attributions wrong because the models are wrong. And like if your models are wrong, it doesn't matter if it's AI or not. It kind of you really have to have that consensus before, get your people together, get your processes together, and then you get the tech going, you know. And most people don't do that. It's tech first and we will catch up with it. I'm going to give everybody a hammer and we're going to build this barn.
Right. Well, the nice thing is that before digital was around, so before digital, all we had was TV, radio, print, direct mail. So there was no direct line to connect an ad.
Oh, and billboards even famously.
Billboard
I mean, like what are the cookies there? What's the attribution on me driving past this thing at 40 miles an hour?
So that's why if we go back philosophically, we're at spend money, you're buying impressions, which leads to awareness that then leads to someone coming into your store and sales. Back then, we used a technique called marketing mix modeling, which was focused on contribution, which is incrementality, meaning what is the incremental, what is the contribution this gave to sales? But marketing mix modeling was a large project, if you will, because it was a heavy lift in terms of data, but it was focused on impressions, spend, but the output wasn't actionable for today's marketer. The output was at the channel level, okay? Which doesn't do me if I'm buying programmatic, telling me spend 5% more. Yeah, what am I supposed to do with that? So what we've done, the modern approach to attribution with cookies going away, kind of the cookieless solution, is to kind of reboot marketing mix modeling, but do it at a granular level and use machine learning and use AI to get to those answers. So interestingly enough, the technique that's driving most of the AI today is something that's been around since the 1700s. That's what most people don't know. It's called Bayesian. So if you look up Bayesian, it's been around since the 1700s. And then we use a technique in combination with that called seemingly unrelated regressions. It's been around since 1968. Now, these two in combination, with the amount of data that you have to do, there wasn't enough computing cycles to do it fast enough to make the output reasonable. But now with how computers are moving so much faster, this concept of like Moore's law and stuff, we can now take these two very old techniques, combine them to give us amazing output where we're taking in non-PII data, so daily aggregated data, the kind of data that you guys organize perfectly at NinjaCat, pull it into an AI machine learning model and output very granular detail so that marketers, it can be actionable. It can tell them where to spend more, where to spend less in order to get the desired outcome, which is amazing.
And if you don't have that ability, you're just doing it by your guts. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Like you just do it with your eyeballs?
That's right. And you're making decisions based on less than 30% of the data because you don't know where those impressions came from. And you're right, you're just based on gut. And the problem is that if you're marketing based upon gut, there's going to be a point where your budget is high enough where your CFO is going to say, no, it needs to add up in the spreadsheet. Sorry. So you need to have a single source of truth in the organization that everyone believes in. And that's where once you do a historical analysis with this new type of attribution, you then need to build consensus. You need to take 1 to 2 to 3 quarters to do the experiments, to do what's right. And the end result is you end up unlocking the value of these upper funnel channels, things like paid social, digital out of home, Pinterest, and then these new, what we call no-click digital channels like CTV and podcast. Like there's no place for a podcast to live inside of GA4 or CTV. So these are all upper funnel stuff. If you play things right, you open up your budget to spend more there. That drives more people through your funnel. You get an increased reach. and my God, you're a genius. And everyone, you walk through the halls of your organization, everybody is they're
Throwing
holding up banners with your name on
roses.
it.
They're
Yes,
throwing
exactly.
full roast beef sandwiches at you, just like, look at him.
That's right.
Um,
Amazing.
but it's so refreshing to hear someone with your level of technical expertise, but also your energy, because it seems like a solvable problem when I talk to Jeff. But when I talk to any other marketer who is just basically flavoring their spreadsheets with tears, it seems like a very extremely complicated task. But one thing that you said interesting was take a couple quarters, 2-3 quarters. Jeff just said it's going to take about a year for you to really get it rolling. And so it really behooves your organization to not wait until the problems start, to take a moment right now and take a look. If you're over-clicked, you're 20, 30% viewability, you're missing a large chunk. How can you fix that? What can you do? You've given us so many great advice, insights into marketing mix modeling, incrementality. This has been already so amazing, and I'm hoping people are inspired to change. Check out Provalytics, check out NinjaCat too. But if you had to give one piece of advice about attribution, just one, like a bumper sticker moment, what would you put on that bumper sticker?
I would say get Attribution Certified.
What does that even mean? I'm sorry.
What that means is
there an
that
attribution certification somewhere?
good thing that you asked, Jake. Yes, there is. We took a lot of the stuff that we talked about here, and we put it all together in a course because we realize there's a whole generation of marketers that need a different way of looking at things. And so it's available on the Provalytics website, or you can just go to attributioncertified.com. There's no cost. It'll take you probably like an hour and a half. It'll blow your mind in terms, there's a lot of historical stuff. Like, for example, an anecdote that's on there, most people don't understand, like UTM source, all these UTM codes, like where did UTM come from?
Totally.
I'll tell you where it came from. It came from a company called Urchin. Urchin was the original web analytics company that Google acquired that then became Google Analytics.
Interesting.
And UTM stands for Urchin Tracking Module. Most people don't know that. So we throw in a lot of historical anecdotes so you can understand where we were, where we're at right now, and where the future is headed. When you finish it, there's a little quiz. After you take that, you get a certificate to share on your LinkedIn. But in an hour and a half, you will get all up to date with what's happening in the industry. It's not going to give you all the answers, but it'll help shape your mind in terms of understanding to help you predict what's going to happen. That's right at Provalytics, or go to attributioncertified.com.
Oh, yeah. We will provide the link in this show page. That is amazing. I'm going after this. I just know that what you're saying feels right. You buy impressions. Awareness creates the action. It isn't some other thing. Like, that's just what it is. It makes so much sense. So I'm glad that you gave us this. We will provide links. But if people want to contact you, get in touch with you, how can they do that online, Jeff?
Best way is just to go to LinkedIn. Jeff Greenfield, right on LinkedIn. You'll find me there, or just go to Provalytics, click contact, and set up a time. Happy to chat with anyone about this. Listen, when I started in attribution many years ago, analytics doesn't seem like fun. It doesn't seem sexy, but I got to tell you, there's nothing sexier than this, because at the end of the day, my job is to make it easier for marketers to do their job. And data can get very confusing, very overwhelming. That's why the folks at NinjaCat have done an amazing job of aggregating it. Our job at Provalytics is to help make sense of it. And that just makes your job so much easier, which is to be creative.
Cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Okay. Took some time. You were thinking.
Yeah, well, I like both. That's the problem.
That's why we ask the tough questions here.
Right.
This is interesting. Pizza or tostada?
Pizza, definitely pizza.
That was unfair. Pepsi or Coke?
Ooh, Neither.
Good for
Neither.
you. He's going to live forever. I attribute that to Jeff. Magic wand or flying carpet?
Oh, definitely magic wand, because then you can make as many flying carpets as you want.
God,
Really easy, yeah.
I'm going to talk to the editor who gave me these questions. These are poor. Give a toast or have people sing at you.
Oh, give a toast, definitely.
You don't want people singing at you.
No, nobody does.
It's so weird. Every birthday party I go to, look at the person as people are singing. They're not enjoying it. I'm sorry.
No.
They're just not. But
Definitely not.
I want you to sing to me, but oh my God, this is horrible. We're going to run the marketing mix modeling on that. Maybe we'll cut it. Maybe it'll be a new song. I don't know. Okay, finally, and most importantly, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh, that is a really, really difficult one. I wonder. Definitely Star Trek. Definitely Star Trek.
Right. And explain just real quick.
What? Why Star Trek?
Yeah.
But it has to be the original. I mean,
no. I'm not talking about new generation, next generation.
But Star Trek,
straight up.
Star Trek to me broke so many barriers on TV. You know, what they accomplished on that show was just absolutely amazing, and just the stories, some of the best stories ever. In fact, one of the writers for one or more of the episodes, Jerome Bixby, he has there's a movie out that he essentially wrote on his deathbed called Man from Earth, which is still one of the top rated science fiction movies. Man from Earth, highly recommend anyone see it. It's great. It's staged almost like a play, but it's just an amazing. So I think some of the best writing ever was on Star Trek.
What Gets Measured is a NinjaCat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social, and visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.